Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of the newspaper analysis from the UPSC perspective. Today we have taken up important articles from the Hindu newspaper dated 21st March 2023. Topics of today's discussion are displayed on your screen. Let's begin the discussion. Now let's start our session with the first article which appeared on page number 8 in the Hindu newspaper. This article talks about need for switching dietary preferences towards millets diversification in order to assure food and nutritional security. Now, crop diversification is prerequisite for the shift to millet-oriented diets. Now, we have already covered aspects of millets along with challenges pertaining to agriculture sector in DNS dated 19th February 2023. Now coming back to the topic, now if you will look into GS syllabus, aspects related to crops and cropping pattern is important theme under GS paper 3. Also, this theme is important because UPSC has been asking questions based on different aspects, like in 2021 UPSC has asked question related to crop diversification. In 2017 they have asked about types of revolutions took place in agriculture after independence in India. In 2020, they have asked about factors responsible for making rice wheat system a success. And in 2017, they have asked reason for declining rice and wheat yield in the cropping system. So in this discussion, we will take up what is crop diversification, what are its approaches, what is the need of crop diversification in India, and then we'll discuss about challenges and its benefits. So let's begin our discussion. Now, the first question is, what is crop diversification? It means growing more than one crop. That means diversifying the current crop system. So, diversification can be accomplished by adding a new crop species or different variety, or by changing the cropping system currently in use. Commonly, it can mean adding more crops into an existing rotation. For example, farmer can plant maize and beans together in the same field. This helps to reduce the risk of crop failure and enhance soil fertility. Now, crop diversification is not only related to crop. It also includes an integration of crops and livestock. That means mixed farming. Now, crop diversification encompasses several aspects such as crop species diversity, varietal diversity within crop species, genetic diversity within crop species. So, diversification of agriculture will help in shift from monocropping to multi-cropping, such as horticulture, pulses, oil seeds, etc. Also, it will focus on allied activities such as animal husbandry, poultry, fisheries, apiculture, etc. So, how this will help? This will provide nutritional security, income security, and sustainable agriculture. Now, with this, we know that what is crop diversification? That is growing more than one crop in an area. And it not only includes crop, it also talks about livestock. And these are the different aspects related to crop diversity. Now, let's discuss different approaches of diversification. First is horizontal, second is vertical, and other approaches include land-based, water-based, varietal diversification. So let's discuss these approaches in detail. First is horizontal diversification. It is done by basically two approaches, through crop substitution, and another one is crop intensification. Crop substitution means replacing any crop which is growing as a monoculture crop or gain a tendency of specialization. Now, it is better to understand this with the help of example. Now, during Green Revolution, there was a tendency to grow cereal crops only. But nowadays, farmers are shifting from monoculture cereal based staple food to high value crops like vegetable, spices, etc. So, this is crop substitution, replacing cereal crop with high value crop like vegetable and spices. Another one is crop intensification. That means adding a new value crops to existing cropping system for what? To increase productivity. To reap the benefits of agricultural diversification, we must move away from simple crop rotation and towards intensive system such as multiple cropping, intercropping. Intercropping is when two or more crops are grown simultaneously in the same field. For example, farmers may grow maize and beans together with the maize providing support for the climbing beans. This example we have already discussed. Another intensive system is relay cropping. Relay cropping is when a second crop is planted before the first crop is harvested. Example of this is farmers may plant rice in a field that has already been sown with wheat. So in intercropping, crops are grown simultaneously, but in relay, second crop is planted before the first. So these are the examples of intensive system. Now let's move to another type of diversification, that is vertical diversification. Vertical diversification represents the degree and the level of industrialization of agricultural production. So what happened in this? In this approach, farmers and others add value to products. How? Through packaging, processing, regional branding, merchandising to improve the marketable value of crops. Food crop vertical diversification is also described as the extension of post-harvest activities. These are the subject-specific keywords which you should definitely include in your mains answer. So what are these post-harvest activities? Processing, packaging, transformation industries to allow food crop to be sorted, graded, processed into both food and industrial products. So these products are transported to domestic or export markets. So this is all about vertical diversification. Now let's discuss other type also. This include land base. In this, crops should be selected on the basis of land configuration. For example, on slopy lands, an alternate cropping of erosion promoting and erosion resisting crops like legumes should be adopted. Second is varietal. Here crops having low yield and susceptibility to various vagaries should be substituted with high yielding and sturdy crops for what? For profit maximization. Third is water based. Here hardy crops like millets should be promoted in rain-fed and water-stressed areas. So we have covered different approaches to crop diversification in detail. Now let's move to the next important section, that is why crop diversification is needed in India. First point in this is conundrum of green revolution and food security. Conundrum means confusion. Now as you know, phenomenal increase in production of food grains after green revolution has not translated into commensurate increase in food security. That is why we have used the conundrum of green revolution and food security. What is a task for the sake of food security? But in reality, it has not translated into increase in food security. And this is evident in India's poor ranking on global indicators such as Global Hunger Index, that is GHI. India rank is 107 out of 121 countries. And this can be attributed to lack of diversification in agriculture, which has also led to stagnation in income level of farmers. Second, why we need diversification is to have nutritional security. Presently, the production basket of agriculture is dominated by rice and wheat. However, there has been shift in consumption pattern towards more protein-based foods such as pulses, milk, egg, fish, meat, etc. So what is happening? Production basket is dominated by rice and wheat, and current consumption pattern is tilting towards protein-based diet. So it is leading to mismatch in demand and supply, thus creating nutritional insecurity. So we need diversification to plug this gap of demand and supply, and this will also address the micronutrient deficiencies like vitamin, iron, etc. Now diversification will also help in enhancing income levels of farmers. According to Dalwai panel, expansion in diversification by 1 hectare could increase annual income of farmers by 1 lakh. So with this you can see how diversification will enhance income level of farmers. Next is sustainability. Protecting the environmental degradation by reversing the decline trend in soil productivity and groundwater table. So ecological balance sustainability of natural resources is necessary as they are critical for reversing the ill of exploitative practices. Next is diversification could lead to higher productivity. How? Cereal crops occupy 42% of agricultural land but contribute only 20% of agricultural GDP. However, horticultural crops occupy only 14% of agricultural land but contribute 33% of agricultural GDP. So currently the maximum area is occupied by cereal crops, that is 42% of agricultural land. But how much they are contributing? 20% to agricultural GDP. But horticultural crops occupied only 14% of agricultural land and they are contributing 33%. So these are the important aspects which can reflect why we need diversification in India. Now, let's discuss few important challenges related to diversification in India. But you should know by and large, challenges pertaining to crop diversification are similar or one may say extension of the challenges that are being faced by the agriculture sector in India. So the first in this is dependency on rainfall. Now as you know, more than 40% of the sown area depends on monsoon, thus affecting the decision for adoption of diversification. So farmers face difficulties in finding suitable diversification option and often shy away from shifting from established patterns. Next is suboptimal use of critical inputs like lack of knowledge, awareness, income security. All these combines in effect resulting into low use of critical inputs like organic manure, biopesticides. Next is fragmented landholding. Small and fragmented landholding along with poor mechanization of agriculture reduces income prospect of Indian farmers and thus results in lack of resources for diversification. Next is institutional credit. In this, lack of credit availability further exaggerate the impediments in crop diversification which in long run will hamper the ecological balance. Next is lack of forward linkages. Inadequate post-harvest technologies or inadequate infrastructure like cold storage along with suboptimal levels of agro-industry adversely impacts post-harvest handling of perishable crop. So what will happen? This will disincentivizes crop diversification. Next is inadequate supply of quality seeds and planting material of improved cultivators. So inadequate supply will result into lack of motivation for initial push for adopting such practices, that is crop diversification. So these are important challenges related to crop diversification. Now, having discussed the need of crop diversification and challenges related to crop diversification, let's throw some light on benefits of diversification. First in this is improvement of soil fertility. Now, one of the most important constraints for sustainable crop production is low soil fertility. In smallholder system, poor farming practices, mostly continuous cropping with limited external inputs have gradually depleted soil fertility. So interaction of crop species with beneficial soil biota helps in maintaining biogeochemical cycling of both organic and inorganic nutrients in the soil and maintaining soil quality. Next in this is increasing the profitability of small farm holdings. Now domination of marginal and small farmers is one of the primary issues confronting India's agricultural sector. Why? Due to their low operating base. So increasing the production of existing crop, that is staple fruit crops, may not be enough to boost their earnings. Therefore, what is needed? Diversifying the traditional cropping system, which is a best option to enhance income of small and marginal farmers. Next is employment generation. This is a significant role of agriculture, but adopting the conventional cropping system like rice wheat generally leads to lack of employment during off seasons. So crop diversification helps rural households to have more opportunities of full-time employment. Next is natural resources conservation and enhancement. Now, diversification is required to recover and enhance the value of the deteriorated natural resource base. For example, farmers in eastern India, particularly in West Bengal, adopted wheat into a primarily rice system to take advantage of leftover moisture and so minimizes the need for wheat irrigation. In Punjab, on the other hand, in judicious crop mix such as wheat rice has exacerbated the problem of waterlogging and salinity. So West Bengal minimizes the need for wheat irrigation, but on the other hand, in Punjab, this crop mix exacerbated the problem of waterlogging and salinity. Next is improving export potential. To increase export potential, it is very much essential to adopt diversification in cropping system. Next is risk reduction. Crop diversification is very much responsive to climatic and biotic vagaries, particularly in fragile ecosystem by expanding locally adopted or introducing novel variety. And related production system will help resource poor farmers improve their food security and income generation while also protecting the environment. Last but not the least, pest and disease control. Now, crop diversification, which favors species combinations over monocultures, which is one of the most cost-effective way to combat pest and disease control. And it has sparked a lot of attention in recent years. So these are the important benefits of crop diversification. Thus, looking at these benefits, the government has to now focus on rainbow revolution in order to bring about holistic development of all sectors like horticulture, animal husbandry, fisheries, food grains, etc. This would have multiple benefits like nutritional and food security, income security for farmers, and overall make agriculture more inclusive and sustainable. For Rainbow Revolution and its constituents, you can refer to Raus, Mains Compass for Economy. Now, our next discussion is based on this article which appeared on page 1 in the Hindu newspaper. Context of this article is that recently Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida recently vowed to expand the India-Japan Global Strategic Partnership, holding that it is important for a peaceful, stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific besides benefiting the two countries in diverse areas. Now, in this context, let us look into the India-Japan relations. Now, as you know, Japan is one of the most industrialized countries in the world, thus a very significant partner for India. And India and Japan are strategic partners. The partnership between both countries ranges in multiple areas which we will be taking up in later part of our discussion like defense, security, trade and investment, science and tech, education, healthcare and critical and emerging technologies. Also, why this theme is important? Because bilateral, regional, global groupings, agreements involving India and affecting India's interests is important theme under GS paper 2. Also, UPSC has been asking question based on ties between India and Japan. Like this question based on economic ties between India and Japan came in year 2013. So in this regard, let's begin our discussion. Now let's start our session with the history of Japan and India relationship. It is only in the post-Cold War era that the two countries started reaching out to each other. In fact, there's a stark difference in relation in the pre-Cold War era and the post-Cold War era. The connection between India and Japan has a long history that is built in spiritual affinities as well as strong cultural and civilizational ties that date back to the visit of the Indian monk Bodhisena in 1752 AD. Later, in pre-Cold War era, that is, before 1990, India and Japan were in opposite camps. How? Japan was an ally of US and India was considered a close partner of USSR. Japan was also very critical of India's nuclear program. Thus, relations never flourished much. Post-Cold War era, there has been a significant improvement in bilateral relations. India has gone closer to US. Both Japan and US are India's strategic partners. Further, LPG reforms in Indian economy have created multiple synergies between India and Japan. Both countries have also signed a civil nuclear agreement with each other. Here one must understand the evolution of cherry blossom phase of India and Japan relations. Let's look into the timeline. In 2000, Japan-India Global Partnership in the 21st Century was launched. Then in 2006, relations was upgraded to Global and Strategic Partnership with the provision of annual Prime Ministerial Summits. Then in 2011, a comprehensive economic partnership between India and Japan. Then in 2013, the Emperor and Empress of Japan visited India. Then in 2014, PM Abe was a chief guest at the Republic Day parade in New Delhi. During the visit, relations were upgraded to special strategic and global partnership. Thus, India-Japan relations have reached a cherry blossom phase. Japan has become India's closest partner, and according to Kautilya's Mandal theory, Japan is India's natural ally. Now, let's ponder into the current state of India's relation with Japan. Japan is very close partner with which we have annual summit and 2+2 foreign and defense ministerial meeting. Regular annual summits have been held between India and Japan since 2006. The last annual summit was held in March 2022 in New Delhi. Then the decision was taken in the 2017 summit to establish India-Japan Act East Forum. And the objective of this forum is to coordinate development projects in Northeast India in areas of connectivity, forest management, disaster risk reduction, and capacity building. Now let's talk about bilateral treaties and agreements. Now, bilateral treaties and agreements signed between India and Japan since 1952. The year 2022 marks the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Japan and India. Among all treaties listed here, one of the most important one is Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which was signed in year 2011. The agreement covers not only trade in goods but also services, movement of natural persons, investment, intellectual property rights, custom procedures, and other trade related issues. So these are the bilateral treaties and agreements signed between India and Japan. Further, the defense cooperation between the two nations has also emerged as one of the key areas of engagement. India and Japan are part of conducting many military exercises like Veer Garjan, Dharma Garjan, Malabar exercise, International Fleet Review, etc. These are also important for your prelims examination. Also, tri-service exchanges between India and Japan have been institutionalized, completing the triad. Coast Guards have regular annual exchanges since year 2006. New Delhi and Tokyo are also part of Quadrilateral Strategic Dialogue, that is Quad, alongside Australia and US. Quad is dedicated to working with regional allies who support a free and open Indo-Pacific. Now let's see few key areas of engagement between India and Japan with respect to economy. In terms of commercial and economic ties, the bilateral trade between India and Japan stood at USD 20.75 billion in 2022, which was the largest ever. Also, Japan is the fifth largest investor in India, as large sum of Japanese companies are exploring opportunities in India in several sectors. Further, India has been the largest recipient of Japanese official development assistance loan for the past decades. Example of this is Delhi Metro, which is one of the most successful examples of Japanese cooperation through the utilization of official development assistance, that is ODA. Moreover, India and Japan have an industrial competitiveness partnership, that is IGICP, under which both the countries are cooperating to promote industrial cooperation between the two countries. Also, a roadmap under India-Japan Industrial Competitiveness Partnership was launched at the annual summit held in New Delhi in March 2022. Further, Japan and India launched a clean energy partnership during the annual summit held in year 2022. It aims to promote energy cooperation between Japan and India through diverse and realistic energy transitions, utilizing all energy sources and technologies to ensure energy security, carbon neutrality, and economic growth. Further, Japan is also helping in building multiple industrial and infrastructural projects like Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, dedicated freight corridor, etc. Also, you should know that Japan's working age population is reducing, and in this respect, India, with its surplus labor force, can provide workers for Japan's need. And for this, India and Japan signed MOU on specified skilled workers to promote movement of skilled workers and Japanese language requirement from India to Japan for employment on a contractual basis. Now, let's see important engagements related to science and technology. Now, bilateral science and technology cooperation was formalized through a intergovernmental agreement signed in year 1985. Recent initiatives include establishment of three India-Japan joint laboratories in the areas of artificial intelligence, IoT, and big data. Further, ISRO and JAXA signed a MOU in year 2016 to pursue future cooperative activities in the use and exploration of outer space exclusively for peaceful purposes. Further, India-Japan Digital Partnership was launched during the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Japan in October 2018, furthering existing areas of cooperation as well as new initiatives within the scope of cooperation in science and tech, focusing more on digital ICT technologies. Further, in view of the similarities and synergies between the goals and objective, India Ayushman Bharat and Japan's Ashwin, both sides have been consulting with each other to identify projects to build a narrative of Ashwin for Ayushman Bharat. Now let's see important engagements in other areas. In this, first is Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, which is a collaborative effort to soft balance China's Belt and Road Initiative project. This corridor is an economic cooperation agreement between the governments of India, Japan, and multiple African countries. Also, Japan and India are part of G4 Club besides Brazil and Germany, demanding permanent membership of the UNSC. Also, both the countries work closely on global issues such as proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, terrorism, space, cybersecurity, environment. The best example of this is International Solar Alliance. Now, these are the key areas where Japan and India share the good and the thriving partnership. But despite the good and the thriving partnership between both countries, there are still few issues that have kept the two nations distant from each other. The first challenge is full potential. How? Compared to India's trading relations with China, Indo-Japan ties have not yet reached their full potential. Second is strategic then economy. How? Rather than economics, strategy has been the main factor behind Indo-Japan relations. The economic pillar need to be strengthened. Currently, the main challenges which have constrained the Japan-India economic partnership is India's complex regulation, red tape, ad hoc nature of state-level interventions. Further, regional comprehensive economic partnership. Japan is optimistic that India might consider joining RCEP. Japan has indicated that India-Japan collaborations in other countries may be impacted if India continues to stay out of RCEP. Now, what is RCEP? It is a 15 nation and which is one of the world's largest trade deal, includes China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, that is Asia, represents 30% of global GDP and population. Next challenge is with respect to Ukraine. India and Japan have different views on this matter. While India has refrained from criticizing Russia and has been calling for a peaceful and diplomatic solution, Japan has denounced the Russian attack. However, there is a mounting pressure on India to modify its stance in the light of the rising human rights violations in Ukraine. Another challenge is neither of the two countries want to downgrade its own relations with China, and neither is too eager to open alliance against China. Also, Japan foreign policy is preeminence of Japan's career bureaucrats in foreign ministry that makes radical changes in policy difficult to accomplish. So these are the few challenges between India and Japan. Now, having seen the partnership between both the countries, India and Japan ranges in multiple areas like defense, security, trade, healthcare, etc., and the challenges between both the countries. Now, to overcome these challenges, what is required is need to enhance the relationship between the two countries in order that India-Japan relations are elevated to a new dimension. As the ex-Japanese PM, Abe talked about a broader Asia, wherein he talked about advancing Japanese national interest by strengthening its ties with India, and in the next decade, Japan-India relations to overcome Japan-US and Japan-China ties. Now, our prelim pointer is based on this news which appeared on page 12 in the Hindu newspaper. Context of this news is that both houses of parliament remained paralyzed on Monday over the BJP insistence on an apology from the Congress leader Rahul Gandhi for his democracy remarks and the opposition's demand for a joint parliamentary committee, that is JPC, probe into the alleged stock manipulation by the Adani Group. So here in this section, we will quickly look into some aspects of the parliamentary committees from the perspective of the prelims examination. Parliamentary committee as a theme is also important because UPSC has already asked questions based on parliamentary committees in year 2018. So let's come to the prelim pointer. The first statement is the Constitution of India provides for specific provisions regarding composition, tenure, functions of the parliamentary committee. Now this statement is false. Why? Because Constitution of India makes a mention of parliamentary committee at different places, but without making any specific provisions regarding their composition, tenure, and functions of parliamentary committees. All these matters are dealt by the rules of the two houses. Accordingly, a parliamentary committee means a committee that is appointed, elected, or nominated by Speaker or Chairman. It works under the discretion of Speaker or Chairman and presents its report to the House or to the Speaker or Chairman, and it has a secretariat provided by the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Let's come to the second statement. The consultative committees do not fulfill conditions to be termed as parliamentary committees. Now, consultative committees, which also consist of members of parliament, are not parliamentary committees. So this statement is true. Why? Because they do not fulfill conditions which we have just now discussed. Here, Minister of State in charge of the ministry concerned as the chairman of the consultative committee of that ministry. And the guidelines regarding the composition, functions, procedures of these committees are formulated by ministry. Now, the next statement is all parties gets due representation in proportion of their strength in the respective house in all the three financial committees, that is estimates, public accounts and committee on public undertaking. Now this statement is true. In all these committees, the members are elected by parliament every year from among its members according to the principle of proportional representation by means of a single transferable vote. Thus, all parties gets due representation in it. Now let's come to the last statement. The Lok Sabha does not have committee on private members' bill and resolution, and its functions are performed by the Business Advisory Committee of the House. Now this statement is false because committees relating to day-to-day business of the House clarifies bills and allocates time for the discussion on bills and resolution introduced by private members. Who are private members? Members other than ministers. So this is a special committee of Lok Sabha and it consists of 15 members including Deputy Speaker as its chairman. But Rajya Sabha does not have any such committee, and the same function in the Rajya Sabha is performed by Business Advisory Committee of that house. Our next discussion is based on this article which appeared on page 8 in the Hindu newspaper. To understand the context of this article, you should know that adversarial relations between the ruling party and the opposition are inevitable in a democracy. And in a way, such relations that bring strong differences of opinion and contentious views to the fore are critical. Democracy flourishes when there is reconciliation through legislative debate. Yet, adversarial relations resulting in confrontation following the lack of discourse over differences on issues of public import speak poorly of legislative conduct. And this holds true of Kerala. And that is the context of this article, where legislative business has come to a standstill after a severe deterioration in relations between the ruling coalition and the opposition. And what began as an issue of the Speaker repeatedly disallowing discussion on Rule 50 notices by the opposition United Democratic Front last week has grown into a full-blown confrontation, with legal cases being filed against legislators after incident that resulted in a ruckus in the assembly. Now, as this article talks about Speaker, which is the key component of Parliament and state legislatures, which is important theme under GS paper 2. Also, this theme is important because UPSC has already asked question based on Speaker in year 2021. So, in this discussion, we will talk about role of Speaker. Then we'll see position of Speaker in Britain and what is the role of Speaker in India. These aspects are important for your pre-examination. In this discussion, we will also talk about mechanisms to ensure the neutrality of Speaker in India and issues associated with the Speaker. And we'll end our discussion with a way forward. These aspects are important for your mains examination. So let's begin our discussion. Now, before coming to role of Speaker, first you should know why his role of Speaker is so important. Securing the neutrality of the Speaker is a question that experts in India have been grappling with over 60 plus years. Watchful Parliament forms the foundation of a well-functioning democracy. So the presiding officers of Parliament are key to securing the effectiveness of this institution. The MPs look to them to facilitate debate, protect their rights, and uphold the dignity of Parliament. So, to have a watchful Parliament, presiding officer is important. Now, our next question is, what is the position of Speaker in Britain? In Britain, the promise of continuity in office for many terms is used to ensure the Speaker's impartiality. So here, by convention, Speaker also gives up the membership of his political party, which is not the case in India. Now, let's come to the next question, that is, what is the role of the Speaker in India? In India, Speaker of the Lok Sabha or State Legislative Assembly holds several powers. Like, first in this is presiding officer. The Speaker presides over the meetings of the Lok Sabha, a state legislative assembly, maintains order and decorum in the House, ensure that the proceedings are conducted according with the rules and procedures. Next is decision making. Speaker decides on the admissibility of questions, motions, amendments, also decides on the allocations of time for discussions and debates. Next is committee formation. Speaker appoints the members and chairpersons of various parliamentary committees, such as Committee on Public Accounts, Committee on Estimates, and the Committee on Privileges. Next is casting vote. What is this? In case of a tie during a voting, Speaker has the power to cast the deciding vote. Next is disqualification of members. Speaker has the power to disqualify a member of the Lok Sabha or State Legislative Assembly on the ground of defection, misconduct, or violation of parliamentary rules. So if there's a question that who has the power to disqualify a member of Lok Sabha on the grounds of defection, and there are two options, President and Speaker. So the right answer is Speaker, who has the power to disqualify a member of the Lok Sabha on the grounds of defection. Now moving on to the next point, that is maintenance of order. The Speaker has the power to suspend or expel a member who violates the rules of the House or behaves in a disorderly manner. Next is role with respect to parliamentary affairs. Speaker is responsible for the administration of the Lok Sabha or state legislative assembly, including the preparation of the annual budget, allocation of funds, recruitment of staff. So here we can see Speaker of the Lok Sabha or state legislative assembly plays a crucial role in ensuring the smooth functioning of the parliament or state and maintaining the integrity of the democratic process in India. Now, let's see what are the mechanisms to ensure the neutrality of speaker in India. First in this is that they are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. Now, what does it mean? That salaries and allowances of speaker are fixed by Parliament. Next is his work and conduct cannot be discussed and criticized in Lok Sabha or in state legislative assembly except on a. Next is power of regulating procedure or conducting business or maintaining order in the house are not subject to the jurisdiction of any court. Another mechanism to ensure the neutrality of speaker in India is casting vote, because he only exercises a casting vote in the event of tie. This makes the position of speaker impartial. Also, he is given a very high position in the order of precedence. He is placed at the 7th rank along with the CJI of India. Now, having discussed the role of the speaker in India and the mechanisms to ensure the neutrality of speaker in India, let's discuss few issues associated with speaker. The first in this line is that there is no security in the continuity of the office. What does it mean? That speaker is dependent on his or her political party for re-election. This makes the speaker susceptible to pulls and pressure from her or his political party in the conduct of the proceedings of the House. Next is persistence of allegations of prejudice. Now, as you know that there has been a tradition of appointing the speaker from the majority party and the deputy speaker from the opposite side, that is opposition side, which has led to structural problems. Another issue is that there is no convention of speakers relinquishing their party membership, and hence they are often perceived as being partisan. Next, it is common for Indian speakers to have occupied ministerial roles shortly before or after their term. So as a result, if there is no evidence to substantiate such allegations, so it is not unexpected for speakers in India to be accused of partisanship. Another issue is anti-defection law assigns the responsibility of deciding whether a member should be disqualified to the speaker, who has a significant discretion. However, this discretion has often been exploited by the ruling party to eliminate dissenting voices. Next issue is determination of money bill. Now, it has been criticized for certifying bills such as Aadhaar bill as money bill, though it may not have met the strict criteria laid out in the constitution. So these are the few issues associated with speaker. Now let's see what is advisable to overcome such issues. So first way forward in this regard is the responsibility of the speaker in dealing with defections, splits, mergers should be assigned to an impartial entity such as Election Commission or a neutral body outside the legislature. Second is to ensure a smooth and uncontested re-election process. It is recommended to establish a tradition of re-electing the speaker without any opposition. Next is during parliamentary discussions and question hour, effort should be made to allocate time to members based on party strength and also to accommodate those who wish to express diverse concerns or viewpoints. Next is, in order to enhance trust in speaker's decision-making process, it is advisable to increase transparency by making the speaker's decision publicly available. And last but not the least, reluctance of a speaker to take action against disorderly members should be mitigated if the media play a constructive role in highlighting instances of misconduct and their negative impact on the House performance. Now, our last discussion is based on this article which appeared on page 10 in the Hindu newspaper, and context of this article is that 5 years after the Supreme Court allowed foreign law firms and foreign lawyers to visit India on a temporary period, for giving legal advice to their clients. Bar Council of India, that is BCI, a statutory body governing legal practice in India, has framed rules that allowed them to open offices in India. Why this is a statutory body? Because it was constituted under the Advocates Act 1961. Now, why this article is important? Because statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial body is important theme under GS paper 2. And also UPSC has asked question based on Bar Council in year 2022. So in this discussion, we will look into the Supreme Court judgment, what are the rules, what powers does the Bar Council of India have, and what are the implications. So let's begin our discussion. In Madras High Court judgment, that is A.K. Balaji versus Union of India, Supreme Court had ruled that the foreign law firms or foreign lawyers cannot practice law in the country either on the litigation or non-litigation side. However, Supreme Court held that there was no bar for the foreign law firms or foreign lawyers to visit India for a temporary period on a fly-in and fly-out basis. That is for the purpose of giving legal advice to their clients in India regarding foreign law or their own system of law and on diverse international legal issues. So fly-in and fly-out will cover a casual visit, not amounting to practice, and further, Bar Council of India can regulate this aspect of practice of foreign lawyers. So Supreme Court had also asked BCI to make appropriate rules in this regard. So that is why recently BCI notified the rules for registration and regulation of foreign lawyers and foreign law firms in India 2022. According to this rule, foreign lawyers and foreign law firms can practice foreign law, international arbitration, joint ventures, mergers and acquisition, intellectual property matters, etc. on a reciprocal basis. So such reciprocity would be mutually beneficial for lawyers from India and abroad. So what is the significance of this rule? This would help to address the concerns expressed about the flow of FDI, that is foreign direct investment, into the country and would help make India a hub for international commercial arbitration. So this is quite much needed. Why? Because if foreign lawyers are not allowed to work in India, now legal fraternity of India may be left behind in providing legal professional expertise in accordance to the rule of law in a manner consistent with the best interest of this fast growing class of clients in India. So let's talk about regulations according to the rule. For foreign lawyers and firms to practice in India, a primary qualification is required in the form of certificate by a competent authority of their home country, which states that they are entitled to practice law in that country. Then their registration in India with BCI is mandatory and must be renewed every 5 years. Moreover, the BCI has the right to refuse to register any foreign lawyer or law firm if it is likely to become disproportionate to the number of Indian lawyers or firms registered or allowed to practice law in the corresponding foreign country. So what are its implications? On a positive side, if the foreign law firms do set up, it would be huge for the corporate legal practice in India, as we have discussed recently, as competition can lead to improvement in legal services. Also, foreign law firms will now be allowed to hire Indian lawyers, expanding the legal job market. So it will give boost to employment. Now let's see a few negative implications. Some experts feel that this will lead to lawyers deserting the real need in India. We might see more Indian lawyers going abroad and deserting the real need in India, that is defending and fighting for the rights of the poor. That's all for today. Stay tuned for more such updates.